Hello and welcome to ADHD Mums. In this podcast, we tackle the tough, often unspoken realities of motherhood, neurodiversity, and mental health. Hello and welcome to ADHD Mums. Today we have an episode on Perinatal Mental Health Week. And of course, we have Julie from PANDA. How are you, Julie?
So well, Jane. Thanks for having me.
I shut my books for the next 6 months. I have got so many guests backed up. And when I saw your email, it's such an area that I'm passionate about that we see here at ADHD Mums so often. I pushed apart the C's basically. And I was like, okay. And then again, I've got a keynote on today and I was like, I will do PANDA anyway because it's so important. So I'm so happy you're here. What an important week it is.
Thank you. And, I hope you're looking after yourself in amongst all of that pushing C's apart. But yes, it is such an important week to recognise the work that we do every single day.
It is. It is. So, Julie, for anybody that doesn't know a lot about PANDA, I put PANDA in the show notes nearly every episode. But could you give us a bit of an idea about who you are and who PANDA is?
Of course. So I have the luxury of being the CEO of PANDA. I'm a clinical psych by trade. I'm a real passion and purpose forward individual who absolutely loves working with people who care for people. As CEO of PANDA, I'm so very proud of the work that we get to do in this country and the joy I get in talking about what we do and raising awareness across, multiple platforms and conversations such as this, Jane. PANDA is and has been the deliverer of the National Mental Health Helpline for perinatal mental health and wellbeing for parents who are either in the pregnancy period or the 12 months following the birth of their bub. We've done the helpline for this country for a number of years and have great skills and expertise and specialise in supporting parents at this really important time, regardless of what their experience is. And, the work that we do that complements this sits on our website and the valuable tools and resources that we put out to the community and health professionals to ensure that we're wrapping around parents at this time and giving them as much evidence-based content as possible to be able to help them on their way or care for each other.
Oh, absolutely. Some of the data that you guys emailed me when you emailed me about the week, and I knew it was bad. I see the emails. I sometimes feel really down with the amount of emails and what I read, and I can only imagine what PANDA would see. But I thought it was confronting because your email initially said that there was 1 in 3 new parents that were contacting PANDA about self-harm, thoughts of running away. What does that tell us about how families are really doing?
Yeah, such a good question. And I would just reiterate that the 1 in 3 parents is those that are completing our national mental health checklist online. So we have this beautiful checklist that allows people to kind of check in with how they're going, do a bit of a questionnaire that then gives them access to a report and supports that they can, take up to have conversations outside of that. But, it really does get to the nub of the problem, and that is that parenting is not an easy role. It's not a worn jacket that people just slip on and feel comfortable with. For many of us, we enter this time having these really unrealistic expectations of what parenting is going to be when you're a first-time parent, having all of these societal norms thrown at us, bringing our backpack of crap, as I always talk about, into the parenting journey, and then expecting ourselves to perform beautifully in that space because, of course, we're marketed that everyone does. The things that we see, on our checklist of people completing it are really important because they're in the moments when other supports aren't there or when people are kind of first testing the waters around exploring their mental health and wellbeing. So, that disclosure of self-harm and wanting to separate yourself from your experience and self-care, which is our kind of primary instinct, is just so important. We hear the same stuff on the helpline, and the helpline when we're talking to individuals directly is not necessarily as heightened as 1 in 3. We know about 16 to 18% of callers currently are reaching out with thoughts of suicide and self-harm and need support in that moment, and that's too many people.
Oh, it is. It is. The stats are usually with helplines that they usually call late at night. I can imagine for PANDA it would be hot late at night.
The feeding hour.
It would be. It'd be like, oh my God, lifeline. I mean, I'm actually thinking maybe I should call PANDA later. As I said, because I'm in perimenopause. So I'm like, it's all a lot going on.
Yeah.
So when these people are calling late at night, what are they kind of feeling and what are they needing most?
So Our helpline is actually only open from 9 a.m. till 7:30 p.m. Monday to Friday, and from about 10 till 5, 10 till 4, depending on our staff availability on a Saturday. So we have quite limited coverage. But what we do know from our online resources and our mental health checklist, which we're kind of using as a complementary digital support and directing and navigating people to the things that we offer, but also our beautiful partners offer, is this opportunity to do the checklist. And what we're seeing is that so many people, in fact, 75% of people who complete our online checklist do it outside of our open hours, and the majority do it in the PM till 10 p.m. at night. So, there's a real advocacy position for us about wanting to increase our helpline, and we'd love it to be 24/7, but we also know that we need to focus in on where the data is telling us need is. And we know that there's lots of parents once they've settled their bubs, or lots of parents that once they've kind of shed the complexities of the day and sit down as a family unit or a partnership, would really benefit from the helpline being open, when they can hand off a bub to a partner from that 8 till 10 p.m. period. So, that is a really sweet spot for us to be able to work, but also advocate for our partners as well who are doing care in this space, and we're not a crisis line, even though the callers that we support and the people that we support that wrap around them are quite often at crisis point when they come through to us. So we do rely on our partners like, Lifeline and Beyond Blue and all the others that wrap around people also to be there when we're not able to be.
I was wondering, if I talk about mums, is that the majority of the callers if I talk about mums ongoing, or do you see emails as well?
So we're open to everyone, regardless of how people identify. But at the moment, we're probably not supporting any more than 8% of dads, on our highest peak kind of month. And we understand that there are a whole lot of services that support men in this country in the perinatal period and more beyond. But we also know that, dads are less likely to reach out to support such as PANDAs. And we're trying to mix that up so that we're providing, more accessible pathways for our dads. And we partner on some really cool programs like SMS to Dad and Dad's Group and, support and encourage lots of access to those other services. But yeah, mums are predominantly those reaching out. And we know that, universally the data still tells us that 1 in 5 mums and 1 in 10 dads experience perinatal anxiety and depression. So there is still a differential in the experience in the country, but we also know that screening, is something that's still on the up for men. So we probably don't have an accurate read on how dads experience the perinatal period mentally.
Every now and again on Instagram, I do a bit of a poll about when did you last feel joy? Like, it's very validating for people to see the results, and it's validating for me to see the results, which is why I always share whatever I find on there. However, I ended up doing a series called The Untold Struggles of Motherhood, and I had quite a few anonymous share people. So I had some Aussie mums share anonymously about how they actually felt. And it was so confronting, and the response was massive. But yet mums don't want to say or say out loud that they're not coping. No one wants to come on and say that for fear that we'll be told you don't love your child, you're not grateful. And people definitely don't want any of their stories being shared when they write in or they fill out them. So everything's anonymous. But why do you think mums hesitate so much to say, I'm not coping?
Again, such an amazing question. And I think we kind of have to step back and look at the history, of this country, and look at the history of how women have been supported or not back as a kind of legacy piece. And we know that in this country, and we know that it still occurs, and rightly so for some people who need protective support, we do have a history of taking bubs away from families when we, perceive that people are not able to care for them. And again, not sitting in a space of judgment, but sometimes those supports are needed. And at other times, people have really big stories of how that's impacted their whole family unit intergenerationally. As women, we have this self-expectation that we need to hold it all together, that we need to balance all the balls, that we can't be seen to crumble. And as I said a little earlier on, we still have this societal marketing. And, I love going to birth and baby expos, and I love going to our partners and supporters stores and having a look at the products and how we portray parenting. We're still marketed to in this way that is very much whitewashed with smiling, happy families, really kind of positive experiences. And as you said, that isn't the case for many people, And one of the things that I get the most response to when I do talk back or present at audiences is when I talk about the fact that we don't have to love and we don't have to enjoy the experience of being a parent all of the time. That isn't realistic, and that there are going to be times that we all know where we're really going to struggle with it. And that's what makes us human. That's what makes us good at it. And that is what makes us cherish the moments when we do feel better or we do have those beautiful moments. But the reality is it's absolutely normal, and we hear from our callers all of the time. And a lot of our work on the helpline is reminding people that it doesn't have to feel good all the time. They don't have to get joy all the time. And in the event that this is a pervasive experience that they can't pull out of, then that's the point to really be getting significant supports in place. And that's not about being a failure, and it's not about not being worthy.
And then I suppose on top of that, if you're neurodivergent, you are more likely to be experiencing those things. What are some of the extra challenges that neurodivergent women or mums face in that perinatal period?
Yeah, look, such a passion area. I think we know from the experience of callers, I know from my work as a clinician, I know as a neurodiverse person myself, the way in which we market supports, the way in which we set expectations around milestones and engagement with services, not always, easily adaptable and usable to those people who process and think differently. I see neurodiversity as a superpower, in terms of how people are able to sit and engage in different ways with their bubs in the parenting journey. But I also know that it can be a real barrier and roadblock. A lot of the experiences, especially of people with ADHD, mean that there's this kind of duplication of the sleeplessness, the inability to attend to information, the kind of self-perspective stuff, the hypervigilance, and all of those things are exacerbated normally for people who don't have, neurodiversity. And so for us, we know that doubling down on how we support people and making sure that the care that we provide as a helpline and that we portray in our resources is really considerate, evidence-based and person-centred. So we don't come at any caller or person that we support with a kind of one-size-fits-all approach. It's really about sitting and listening and making sure our staff are trained and skilled and equipped to be able to support people with any range of presentations or skills, But we do know that duplication of people's neurodivergent sort of experiences and presentations can really exacerbate the stress and anxiety. And we know that people with ADHD, especially our mums, are more likely to experience anxiety and have a higher rate of depression, than the normal community. So we have to take that seriously. We have to be prioritising their care. We have to be equipping people with that normalisation of their experience, understanding that they're not alone, and absolutely validate their help seeking so that they're getting the support they deserve.
One of the most popular episodes we have is this ADHD or is this mum life? Because it is so difficult sometimes for people to figure it out, right? Or is this perinatal anxiety or depression, or is this mum life? Is this a bad day? I can't separate. A couple of years ago, I have a best friend that I'm very close with, one of those people that you go over, there's literal shit everywhere and you don't care. And I walked in and it was the first time I ever thought I'm actually going to have to break confidence and speak to her husband. I'm going to have to call him because I'm not sure she's going to be okay until 5 o'clock. Where do you think, or how can we identify for ourselves or for our friends, our family, what is the difference between exhaustion, a bad day, or something serious where we do need to contact people? How can we tell the difference?
I think firstly, it's all about trusting your gut. And that's, again, a bit of a misnomer when you're kind of talking about individuals trusting their gut when they're feeling tired, overwhelmed, stretched in every direction, because your gut kind of flies out the window. But intrinsically, in our kind of reptilian brain, in the core kind of business area of our brain, we know when things don't feel right. But we often suppress that feeling. We often second guess that feeling because we're not trusting our skills globally, and therefore we're not trusting those early warning flags we're experiencing. And I think the most important thing is the minute you have that little feeling that something doesn't feel right, don't sit on it and act. And I think the issue with relationships and people feeling able to have those conversations, and as you said, break confidence, is that we look for the right moments, in all kind of relational theories. We're often looking for the right time to raise something or the right time to interject in a conversation. And the reality is that there just isn't a right time. Going in knowing that you don't have to fix this person, that often it is the mirror that we hold up as confidence and friends or partners, that just sharing, that I hear that people struggle in this time, how are you going? or, hey, it looks like things are feeling a bit unstable for you at the moment, or however you want to gently frame it, is often the point at which somebody else sees I'm struggling and now I need help. So I think the risks of raising things for people and the risk of raising your own experience as something that needs to be addressed is far outweighed by the benefits of being able to seek support and get back on track. And quite often we hear from people, and I've heard from clients I've had myself, that the kind of outcome when they're feeling more stable is, I wish I'd sought support earlier on and not lost this time in whatever stage they are of their life. And that's universal when people help seek. So I think, just reframing that it's often just a little niggle. And sometimes if you ignore the little niggle, it becomes sort of behavioural and thought process flags that are quite major. We know that we quite often have partners who call the helpline because they're seeing their partner do kind of completely out of character things or saying out of character things, and are really scared by that because it's been left for so long. So I think just trusting your gut and knowing you can't break people by having a gentle conversation if you feel up to it.
That's a great point, because you want to be more cautious than the other way, don't you?
We're so protective. We're so protective in society of each other, and that's both a beautiful thing, but it often gets in the way of people getting the support or the help they need in whatever it is that they're tackling.
So what about if parents are reaching out after hours and your services are closed? You talked earlier about 8 till 10 p.m. What kind of changes would need to happen to make your service more accessible and to make it happen until 10 o'clock?
Yeah, look, ultimately for us, it's all about our funding. We are predominantly funded by the Australian government and by state governments. We've seen this really beautiful co-investment from different states and territories like Victoria and Queensland and Northern Territory, which means that we're able to kind of increase the intensive supports that we're able to wrap around people and have those longitudinal kind of supports that we can put in place on the helpline with people. But ultimately it comes down to money. As a not-for-profit organisation, we invest everything that we can into our service delivery and into our resource development. That is what we are all here for. So it's really about getting increased funding, and, we'll be putting forward a submission to the Commonwealth Government, as we always do, to build on our services. We're like a beautiful Lego puzzle block. We keep plugging in things that allow us to expand our reach, expand our specialisation. So we'll continue to do that, and we advocate fiercely in amongst all of that and try to ensure that our partner organisations are also supported in the funding they receive and trying to raise awareness as a community, which Perinatal Mental Health Week is wonderful for, because we all come together and amplify the awareness, but also the commitment we have to each other and supporting each other's services. So I think it's about more money always. It's about people having awareness of the resources that are there. So quite often going to our website, completing the mental health checklist, accessing resources, or engaging with Dot the Bot. We have a chat bot that can direct people to mindfulness meditations or the right resources and things. And that can hold people over till the helpline is open the next morning often. Absolutely. If you or a loved one, is experiencing concern, or you're scared because you're not going as well as you want to, or you feel that you're at risk, especially of suicide or self-harm, absolutely put yourself first, call emergency services and get that support. Because again, all of that stuff just makes, your parenting and your identity richer. It's not a failure. It's absolutely your experience and the journey. Something to get help with and something to move forward from.
If a mum called, I would imagine one of the things that they would say most commonly, just from what I read and what I see in my group, would be like around, I feel like I'm failing. I feel like I'm not doing this right or well. What kind of reframes could we say to a friend, or do you say on your helpline, that could help with that?
There are so many, and I would like to not undermine my helpline team by putting words in their mouth, because they would all approach that very differently. But I think that the concept of failure is one where we need to acknowledge what we're holding ourselves up to. What is the measuring stick that we're using to identify if somebody is a good parent or a failing parent? And the reality is that the benchmark that most of our callers and most of the parents that we engage with that struggle and become anxious in that struggle is often not achievable by anyone, So I think it's bringing it back to the kind of core pieces of, is your baby safe? Is your baby fed? Are you getting sleep? Are you safe? and really making sure that people understand that there are some fundamental requirements that as a parent, regardless of your socioeconomic status and what you're able to bring to your family, home, that there are these just core principles of safety and nurturance that are there, and getting those right is what's important. Engaging with your baby in a positive manner and being bubbly to your community and allowing people in and socialising are not important when you're in this space where you need to look after yourself. But if they are then having a negative impact in terms of you're not socially connected and you don't have the financial means and things, they can become problematic. But I think it's really looking at what it is you're measuring yourself up at and kind of breaking down that myth sometimes, because we have these unattainable yardsticks that we measure our lives by. And I think just being real about the fact that most parents struggle in this period, that is known and normal. If you overlay then, neurodiversity or hardship or vulnerability, and then overlay access to services and supports and all of the other kind of tensions that parents face in the super parenting, it's hard, but that's normal. And getting support is what kind of makes the normal feel manageable.
I was just wondering, with the PANDA services, let's say if we had a friend that was struggling and we were referring them to PANDA, or let's say someone hears something on my podcast, I usually put PANDA at the bottom if I think it needs a kind of lifeline PANDA vibe at the end. I always put that there. What services are there? Is there a limit on how many times you can call? Is it age related? Like what if your child's 5? What are the parameters around it?
Yeah, so again, very good question. So PANDA is funded to provide support to parents who are in the perinatal period. And the perinatal period is defined by the pregnancy period and is defined by the 12 months following the birth of the bub. So if parents have a 5-year-old and no other baby in the picture, then they would be better placed and supported by another helpline. And we would refer people out. We still get callers who would ring in and say, can we help them? And we'd give them referral options. So, it's always best for parents to go directly to the source like Beyond Blue or Lifeline, Kids Helpline or any of those kind of areas. The other piece, I think, is being clear that if the parent is calling and the 5-year-old is an issue, but they have a new baby in the mix, then that is relevant because that is about an experience in the perinatal period. And it may not be relevant to the baby because quite often people have second bubs who feel like a breeze, but they really struggled with their first. We get all of that. We'll talk through all of that. So we would prefer that people seek help and open up that conversation, even if we're not necessarily the right avenue, and then we can support them onto the right area. But there are lots of supports that are available. And again, it's often the barrier of that kind of self-concept and that people will judge me and, I'm not sort of person that needs to get support. Or the other one that women are great at, which is I'm sure there are people with worse issues than me, so I'll let them have the service, and ultimately we just say, make the call. Our whole campaign, this year is about what you want when you want it. We're not able to provide that because we have call rates that we can't always deal with coming into the helpline. We think the country deserves the supports that they need. And if people hold back, then we can't evidence the support people need at this time back to our funders to ask for more funds to be able to do this or think differently about the way we do this to be able to access more people.
It's a great point because let's say if PANDA didn't exist, or let's say that your helpline was so full that the wait time was just astronomical. Let's just say it was, right? Because your alternative as a mother would be probably to go to a GP. Probably what I would tell somebody if I didn't know PANDA was there. I'd say go to a GP. The GP would probably do the K10 or something on them, like a psychological assessment, and they may get a Medicare referral for like 10 sessions for a psychologist. However, there's a large gap payment in this country, isn't there? Not everybody can afford that. Not everybody can afford the out-of-pocket GP expense, let alone the psychologist. The public health system is a long wait list as it is. We won't get into that. So if PANDA was full or it was underfunded or it needed to expand, let's say, and your only alternative is a GP you can't afford, or maybe you don't even bother going because you can't afford the psychologist, then for me it's a real issue because if we know that the nucleus of the family, I always talk about the ADHD mums being the sports coach, like it's a leadership role. You've got to bring your family in. It's exhausting, right? And if your sports coach is wounded or has got some serious mental health issues happening or any mental health issues, you are going to have an issue with your whole team. Next thing you know, you've got the school calling, you've got marital issues, you've got a broken home, you get all kinds of things happening. Because if the mum is not on, just the family is going to struggle, I think. It really blows my mind that we don't support women or mothers more, because how can we expect people to work, the next generation, etc., if we have not got mums with good or even decent mental health support?
Absolutely. And I mean, this is the positioning that we state every day. Ultimately, we see that we are setting up the ideal environment in supporting parents when we get to support them to impact the next generation of parenting and the next generation of parenting, because where parents are able to seek help and kind of adopt the changes that they've put in place and see the vulnerability they had as a bit of a kind of legacy and a badge of honour of having experienced something big and come through it, that goes into their kind of parenting self-concept. And then, that becomes a strength to how they parent their bubs into kids, into young adults. So we see the opportunity, and I see as a CEO, I'm really passionate about healthy communities, healthy people broadly, not just in the perinatal space. And, this is the most important point in a family's journey, as you said, that we can be influencing change. I don't feel, and we don't feel as a sector, that there is enough funds being pushed into this space. The country has had significant investment in other ages and stages, which rightly so it needs to be there. But the perinatal time of parents' lives and in the planning time as well, if we could get people even earlier, are absolutely significant. And we need to be deriving and pushing more money into there and partnering to build more integrated supports, absolutely. There are also other services working in this space, and it would be really reticent of me to not kind of do a shout out to supports like the mum space and mood booster, mum mood booster, dad booster of SMS for dads and for when, and the Gidget Foundation. We have so many partners that are doing amazing work in this space. And again, we all at times have full dance cards in that we can't fit new people in, but there are often tools and resources like our digital resources, our checklist, training and education, or other supports, or mum mood booster or SMS for dads that can kind of wrap around people and provide a really valued methodology of getting support, which is sometimes enough for people. If we can get people calling and seeking support early, that is often enough to stabilise people, and some will not go on to needing to speak to a helpline or a counsellor. I think, as you said, GP availability, not just in being able to take people on and get, mental health treatment plans or care plans generated, but in terms of general awareness around perinatal mental health and how to support people as a general practitioner and sort of their family unit at a local community level is also something that we work to increase and enhance every day.
Okay, so we are going to release this episode in the Perinatal Mental Health Week. What are you looking to achieve that week? How can we get behind you? What do we need to do? Because I'm sure all the mums on this podcast are going to be like, women's health, let's do it. We've got a lot of hardcore advocates on this podcast, myself included. What can we do to assist this week and beyond to get more supports in place?
I think get informed. This, as I said, is a really beautiful amplification of all of the work that we get to do, but it isn't just in this week. But getting informed, visiting PANDA's website, tracking all of our socials, tracking the Perinatal Mental Health Week socials. We all come together as a sector and take, the celebration to Parliament House in Canberra. We come together and talk about the importance of what it is we're all doing and keep us recent and current in the mind of politicians. Just getting involved with some of the discussions that are being there and sharing your experience, because we know that the more that there is this normalisation of experience in social channels or calling into radio interviews we may be doing across the week, the more people are hearing common stories to their own, the more we're kind of demystifying what it is people are experiencing and offering a broader range of experiences that people can connect with. And we know that it's often just that emotional connection with something that resonated with their own experience that loops people in, hooks them in and says, oh, well, if they can do that, I can do that too. Or I can see how support would help me, where I've been putting that on my to-do list rather than, up front. So I just think getting involved, being curious, inquiring, reminding people that they may see as struggling or themselves that they are important enough to get help now. Don't leave it. And just sharing information.
So I suppose I'm hearing from that, like showing demand. like encouraging people to call, following along, showing the people that are needing the service.
Absolutely.
I'd really love to see the service expand to 10 o'clock. I think if we continue to spread the message, like I put it on the show notes, if you're there, agreed, what you said, don't think, oh, I don't want to call and block up the list. That is such a neurodivergent woman thing to think. You're actually helping people because we can expand the service. So this is great. And I think your message around preventative mental health is so important, because leaving it too late, getting into a very dark place, all of that means, I suppose, you're in a deeper, darker hole to pull yourself out. Little couple of centimeters, you might be able to pull yourself back out with a couple of chats and some exercise, a friend, make a few changes. But once you've got that 6-foot hole, it is much more tricky, I would imagine.
Absolutely. And, don't forget that our self-identity and the way that we see ourselves is founded on evidence. So if you're suppressing your needs and you're failing because you're suffering from anxiety or experiencing anxiety, or you're not able to keep up with the bar that you've set yourself, then that becomes evidence against you. So the quicker that you can kind of dispel that, break that down, help seek, feel good about looking after yourself and putting yourself first, and then start to put in place some of those strategies, that then becomes positive evidence about this empowered person that is actually seeking support and able to not necessarily get fixed quickly, but is able to put themselves first and go on the journey because they want to be a better parent for themselves and for their bubs. So I think it's reminding us that we build these concepts of ourselves on evidence, and that evidence doesn't have to be negative. It doesn't have to be about our failures and what we can and can't do or can and can't be for our bubs. It can be about empowered self-help seeking, putting yourself first, making that time, even though it feels impossible to do that.
Absolutely. And lifting other women up. I think we are really getting better. I'm going to put in the show notes, obviously all of the PANDA notes, absolutely, and all of the information. But I'm also going to put in the related episodes for the untold struggles of motherhood from those 3 anonymous mothers. If anyone would like to hear about other mothers talk anonymously, so it's very raw, but we've got content warnings on it, of course, around how does it feel? And sometimes it's really nice to listen to other people that are struggling if you're in that place. But thank you so much, Julie. I would love to support you further. If there's anything that you need in the lead up or you're going for funding, the ADHD mums, you know what? We are fierce advocates of women's health and women's mental health. So I really appreciate your time and thank you so much on providing such a beautiful service.
Thanks, Jane. And look, my thanks go to my team who do the amazing work on the helpline and to produce all the digital resources. But the conversation's been an absolute pleasure. And, we love advocacy. We're born out of lived experience and 2 women who are fierce fighters for change for women during this period. So absolutely love to hear that you have a community that's passion and purpose forward, which is what we are. So thank you for giving the space to have this conversation, raising awareness and connecting people up with resources. It's just such an important thing to do.
Absolutely. And if anyone is on the edge wondering, should I call? You should call.
Absolutely.
Actually, you know what? And if you can't call for yourself, call for someone else. Think to yourself, well, I'm increasing the service by adding to the numbers. That preventative mental health, I think you said that so well. Thank you so much for your time, Julie. It's been a pleasure. I would love to catch up with you another time on perinatal mental health because it's so important.
Thanks, Jane.
Quick announcement. Did you know that we have an ADHD Mums shop filled with resources designed just for you? These resources are packed with answers to the most frequently asked questions I get sent in via email. Everything from understanding ADHD and autism to practical tips for daily life. There's also a free assessment tool. If you're wondering about ADHD or autism for yourself or your little one, don't forget to check out the free assessment tool under free resources section on my website, adhdmums.com.au.